The Community Action and Social Change undergraduate minor program fosters the knowledge, skills, and experiences that are valuable to students' development as change agents in society. Within the minor, we often discuss the importance of storytelling, articulating our values for social justice, and connecting both concepts and frameworks to methods of practice that promote social justice. The following video series presents individual case studies of CASC minor students engaged in community-based social action, and lessons learned through their journey as allies, advocates, activists, and organizers on campus and in community. We've asked each CASCer to share their story and values, and to also describe the frameworks and strategies they've applied to engage in social change. These are their stories.
My name's Lauren Schandevel. I was born and raised in Warren, Michigan. I'm a current senior studying public policy with a CASC minor. And I would say my journey through social justice kind of started with electoral politics in the beginning half of my undergraduate career, and sort of capping it off by realizing that community organizing and engagement was really like my preferred approach to social change. And so combining the top-down, bottom-up approach to make a more robust strategy for social change. Well, this wasn't the first aha moment that I had, but I remember this past summer, back in May, I helped a nonprofit host a listening session between Macomb County, which is my home county, and Detroit. And we had so many people in the room, and I was facilitating these large group discussions with adults, and they were talking about like really pressing issues like segregation in the area, racism, education, environmental justice, and like seeing people from my hometown like come together with people from Detroit and talk about solutions that they could develop as a community, working with each other and advocating for each other was like the most inspiring thing that I had ever seen. And that was the moment where I was like, I want to do this work, and I want to do it here in my community where I know that I can be most effective. So there are two major projects that I've sort of worked on the duration of my college career. So the first started after my freshman year of college, where myself and Megan Wheat, who's my really good friend, decided that we wanted to create this academic minor in social class and inequality. And so our sophomore year was a lot of cold emailing professors and administrators and saying like, we have this idea, what do you think? And eventually we got a bid essentially from the Women's Studies department to house it in their department, and we facilitated task force meetings with department chairs and student leaders and crafted this proposal and took it to the Women's Studies department where they voted on it and approved it, and now it's going to the LSA curriculum committee to become like a real live minor. So that was a super exciting project that I've worked on my entire career in college. And then another thing that I did was last year I crowdsourced a document called Being Not Rich at U of M in response to an affordability guide that our central student government had put out that was sort of tone deaf. And it received a lot of national media attention, and the document itself grew to like 100-something pages, and like suddenly I was speaking at conferences and like on NPR, and it was like wild. And I decided to use the momentum from the guide to start a student organization called Affordable Michigan, which essentially advocates on behalf of low-income and first-generation college students around affordability and access. Yeah, so a lot of my work has been around economic justice in conjunction with racial justice, because I think they go hand in hand. And that comes from my own working class background. And so I was born and raised in Warren, Michigan, which is the third largest city in the state, but there are admittedly not a lot of students from Warren who are on the University of Michigan campus because the students coming from Warren aren't prepared for the University of Michigan. They aren't told that they can come here. And so I actually transferred high schools after my freshman year of high school and went to a wealthier school and saw the disparities in my own education at my previous school district and what these students were receiving at this wealthier school district. So that sort of set in motion my desire to sort of even the playing field for working class students who may have the intellectual capability to be at a place like Michigan, but don't have the guidance or the resources required to get here. And then those students who do end up here are under-resourced. They aren't sort of taken care of by the university because housing is so expensive. Ann Arbor is a food desert for low-income folks. And there's like limited access to healthcare because our health services doesn't accept Medicaid. And so there are all these gaps in resources for low-income students who need it most in order to be retained and thrive here. So I'm lucky enough to have very social justice oriented friends. And so I remember like so many meetings where we would all get together and like find an empty classroom in a university building and like bring a lot of coffee and snacks and just like scribble on the whiteboard for hours, like planning something out. And so I think when we were planning the minor, my initial step was to go to people that I knew were allies. And so I went to Barry Checkaway, who's a mentor of mine and has always been really supportive of my work. I went to Dwight Lang, who's a lecturer in sociology and I knew was receptive to these ideas. And then I went to my friends who were also like social justice oriented and sympathetic to this work. And we were like, okay, what do we have to do to make this happen? And sort of similar processes have played out in other projects of mine. Like I helped develop a social justice curriculum for my old high school. And that was a lot of just like scribbling on whiteboards. We would have meetings where we like planned agendas and like made listservs to send out updates to an email list. Like it was very sort of formal planning processes to these things that were just like a group of friends working on a project together. So those were sort of the initial stages, was just getting receptive people in the room on the same page. So I think in the last year especially, I've been learning a lot about the power of relationships in the community organizing field. So the organization that I'm interning at now, which is called We the People Michigan, really emphasizes like one-on-one meetings with folks who are doing social justice work in order to like really read the room and gauge like their enthusiasm for your work and find ways to be mutually beneficial and collaborative. So that's more of my formal training in using relationships for social change, but I hadn't realized that before that I had been doing just that. And so by connecting with people and sitting down with them and having like one-on-one discussions about like what their interests are, what they think, if I come in with a particular project in mind, what they think of that project, what work they've done that could potentially complement that project, what their capacity for participating would be. And then in less formal ways, like friendships that I've built with people through my work have really influenced my career path, I think. Like I remember the first campaign that I worked on, I met a lot of people there who had graduated from the Ford School, and that was ultimately what convinced me to apply, and now I'll be graduating with a public policy degree, so just like getting guidance in those ways has also been very helpful. I would say some of the highlights and successes of my work have been receiving the recognition that I have, not personally for myself, but for these particular causes. And so I think affordability and access on campus has been highlighted more and more as a result of my organization and the work that we've been doing, which has been absolutely incredible. And I think class and inequality have also been talked about more on campus because of the work that I've done around the minor, but also because of the conversations that I've been having with folks who haven't thought about these things before, but are starting to like piece together how class may impact them or influence outcomes or serve as sort of like an identity for them. And so those have been probably the most rewarding things, especially seeing low-income and first-generation students like advocate for themselves and like realize that they have a lot of power and agency over their own education has been really great. My organization, does a lot of work around affordability, but we also have partnered with a lot of other groups who maybe weren't affordability focused before, but have now sort of shifted their work to meet that need. So for example, we partner a lot with the Roosevelt Institute, which is a progressive policy think tank on campus. But a lot of their work right now has been around affordable housing, and the fact that we're doing work around affordable housing allows us to foster a relationship and develop projects together. So that's been really great. And I've also contributed a little bit to the Central Student Government platform when they ran last year to include affordability and affordability policies. And I now serve as their Campus Affordability and Food Insecurity Task Force Chair. And so I'm really making affordability and access a priority for them, and I'm doing it in a way that's empowering to low-income first-generation students. Building a coalition is all about relationships, in my opinion. So sitting down with key, stakeholders in the organization or decision makers in the organization, and asking them what they're passionate about and how they came to do the work that they are doing. And having more of an informal chat about the work that I'm doing and how we could potentially collaborate has been like actually a great catalyst for creating a more formal relationship between our organizations. And so there were a lot of people that I was already aware of or acquainted with on campus who were doing this work. And so it made it a little easier to sit down with them, but there have been people that I've met who I didn't know before I started doing this work, where we were able to come together and like have really great conversations about the importance of this work, and it's led to some really great partnerships and subsequent projects. Some of the key things that have facilitated my ability to do social justice work has been a really strong support system, particularly a support system that's as devoted to these issues as I am. And so I have a lot of friends who are also doing this work and are doing, similar projects on campus and off campus. And it's been great to sort of sit down with them and not only like recharge and catch up and hang out, but also like talk about the things that we care about, because I feel like for me at least, and I know for a lot of them, it doesn't feel like work when we're doing this. It's actually like, sometimes it does, because there are like hard parts and there are things that you really have to power through in order to get the end result. But like talking about these issues and discussing ways to create social change is actually like really exciting and gives us a lot of energy and motivation to like keep doing the work that we're doing. And so just like finding people who care as much as I do has been really great. Yeah, some of the biggest challenges for my work have been just navigating the bureaucracy, especially for developing the class and inequality minor. I came up against so many people who, particularly faculty and administrators, who were like, this project has a huge scope. It's a huge undertaking. Are you sure you want to do this? Like, I don't think it's possible. I don't think we need this. And so I've sort of overcome that by being able to find allies who are like, no, you're actually like doing the right thing, and we do need this, and it's possible, and like we can get it done. And then there's also the huge issue of burnout. And so my work around affordability on campus has, pulled me in so many different directions, and I have a hard time saying no to people. And so I've found myself in situations where I've been sort of way over my head in all of the obligations that I've, sort of put on myself. And I also have a hard time delegating stuff out. And so just making sure that I'm not the only person doing all the work all the time is something that I need to work on. In order to prevent burnout, I'll start saying no to people, or just take a day for myself and nap. or I'll like spend time with friends. But I need to learn how to like delegate my roles out to people, which is something that I haven't quite nailed down yet. So for the next 2 years at least, I'm hoping to return to Macomb County and do some work there. So I actually applied for a fellowship called Lead for America. It's like brand new, and they're having their first cohort of something called Hometown Fellows, where they basically place you in or near your hometown to do work with local government or nonprofits in the area and like just give back to your community. And so I just found out last night that I'm a finalist, and so I'll find out on December 14th if I actually got it. But I would ideally be returning to Macomb County, working in their Department of Health and Community Services for a couple years, and then going to grad school and getting my master's in public policy. That's as far into the future as I've planned. Check back in a couple years, the plan may have changed. Oh my gosh, in my undergraduate career, I have learned so much about myself and like what I care about and why I care about those things. I think I've really learned a lot about my own background and identity and how that fits into sort of a larger conversation about economic inequality in America. I have gone from feeling sort of embarrassed about my working class background to feeling really empowered by it and using it as a way to, do work around affordability and economic justice. And so just like becoming more in tune with myself and my roots and, how I can use my own experiences to create social change has been like the highlight of my undergraduate career. Some of the most valuable lessons that I learned from the CASC minor were, the importance of empowering communities to advocate for themselves instead of coming in and imposing your own ideas of what the community should be doing onto them. And I think in particular, when I'm thinking about going back to my hometown, like making sure that I'm working within communities that I know and am familiar with and don't feel like I'm imposing on, and being able to empower them enough to essentially go out and implement the projects that they think that they need, and trusting that the community knows what they need. So I think I've learned most through the CASC minor to respect communities, respect their needs and wants and their perspectives of the world, and to let my role as a community organizer be to facilitate their own agency. Yeah, it takes one ally. If you know someone, maybe a professor who, sort of teaches around the area of interest that you have, or a friend who's really interested in these things, or is supportive of you and your work, like sit down, have a conversation, and that could snowball into a new project. That's how so much of my work has started, by just sitting down with people and saying, I have an idea, what do I do? And then letting them refer me to further resources and having that blossom into something amazing. So yeah, go out there, connect with people, tell them what you're thinking and what your ideas are, and let that take you where it takes you.